Hello, this is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about some dire news, kind of doing dire right now. The CDC, we mentioned that they were going to meet to vote on whether or not the childhood vaccination, COVID-19 vaccine should be added to the childhood vaccination schedule, and they did vote like 15-1. And this is going to have some pretty bad repercussions, but the obvious one is that states will follow the recommendation, and but it is up to states. And in my opinion, I think this is something that Republicans need to push, and especially like on a local level, and say, get it out there that they're not going to force your children to take this to go back to school, and to try to get Democrats to where they stand on it. I mean, I wouldn't believe a lot of them what they would say, but at least we need to get some people on record about what they will and what do. Well, they get them on record anyway, because we need to hold them accountable for what they say and what they plan to do, and try to stop them if they do win, and they have the power to do this. So it's pretty dire, but like I said, it should really be part of the campaign conversation now, with so little time left to go. And there's also other repercussions, which we'll get into. Also, Joe Biden was asked point blank, did he believe in any restrictions on abortion? And he said yes. And they said, what restrictions? And he said, it's Roe v. Wade. It's Roe v. Wade, which that doesn't mean anything, because Roe v. Wade was like there's Roe v. Wade, and then there was Casey, and that changed things up. So, I mean, Dobbs repealed both Casey and Roe we Wade actually allows no restrictions depending if the state doesn't have restrictions. So this still says he believes up until 9 months. So people who keep repeating Roe, go back to Roe, whatever, don't know what it did, don't understand what it actually does. So perhaps, I don't know, maybe he's a doddering old fool and doesn't know, or maybe he's been there long enough to know better, for sure. They just don't want to say that they believe in no restrictions, so they're going along with these talking points. And that's really what it is. Also, Chris Hayes went on a rant from MSNBC why he thinks it's a good thing that Biden is manipulating gas prices with our strategic oil reserve, which I thought he couldn't do that. I thought presidents don't have anything to do with the gas prices. That's what they told us before. So that's where we're at now. But before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content I have on my website, different articles. I did drop one last night about the upcoming gender apocalypse that's coming to Michigan. So please make sure that you share that so people are aware of what's going on. Please make sure that you check out different videos, that you share that stuff. If you like what I do here at blacktnews.com, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. It costs to stream, it costs to run my site, it costs to travel, it costs to use the software that I use. Everything, there's a price associated with it. So if you want to help with that overhead, and if you can, I very much appreciate it. Please go to the website and support, and also check out different merchandise that we have at the store as well. Like the cool pro-choice men are sus, and that stands for suspect. Got the cool pumpkin spice mugs. Got this really neat The Constitution is Glorious Liberty document t-shirt that you guys can get, and all kinds of different stuff. So check out that stuff. Also want to give kudos to Brighter Mission Pack. I'm in their studio. If I say something today that triggers you, they don't care. It doesn't work like that. I'm just using the space. I like to uplift conservative voices, and I very much appreciate all the work they're doing. We had some good news the other day. There's a clerk who had to resign because she was shady as heck. And she basically is getting like a slap on the wrist and paying a fine. But for the people are always like, oh, there's nothing wrong with our elections, blah, blah, blah. And for the most part, you can argue that that's true, but you can't say that there's like no fraud. And she had to resign in disgrace. So anyway, Brighton Michigan PAC made sure to go through Southfield and drop literature about her and raise the alarm. So they do good work, and I appreciate the Brighton Michigan PAC. And I'm glad that at least she resigned and is getting some kind of punishment. But it could have definitely been worse. But hey, it's the world we live in, I guess. But it was when it's the Democrats in charge and it's one of their own. It is what it is. You think she'd get harsher penalties as these people are trying to save democracy. But got to take what victories you can get, I guess. Also, please make sure that you guys check out different content that I also have on my book website. If you go to blackteeners.com, hit the merchandise button, you'll see other stuff that I have written that I have. And I'll be announcing soon where you guys can pre-order my abortion book soon. All these books are like fiction, except for one's nonfiction. But I do have a nonfiction book that is like topical that you guys will like and appreciate. And I'll do an audiobook. Some people are like, do you do audiobooks? I'm like, I'm working on it and I will have an audiobook. So slow your roll. Okay, guys. So let's get into it. I have a meme. I don't know if it's gonna exactly fit correctly when I pop it up. And it's another mean one. It's another mean one. Because Biden's trying to, I guess, help Fetterman. And this is from Grand Old Memes. And in case you can't see it, well, Biden is kissing the bulge on the back of Fetterman's head. And another mean meme today with Fetterman. I'm sorry, it was funny. I had to do it. I had to show it. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Anyway, let's move on to this really pressing story regarding the CDC. So they decided to vote 15-1, in which, by the way, look, there's like, why are they in mass? I don't know. But they voted 15-1 to officially add the COVID-19 vaccine to the child immunization schedule.
Yes, 15 unanimously in favor.
And that's it. I don't think I can pause it. Yeah, but some of them were in mask, and I'm like, why are we still doing that? Do they just not want everyone to see them? Is it out of shame? So what that will do is that the CDC guidance is now that children should be forced to get the jab to go back to school, but the decision will rest with the states. So most of them will probably go along with that. In Florida, they already said they're not doing that. So if you have an awesome rock star governor who believes in freedom, the people, and science, you don't have anything to worry about. Unfortunately, I live in a state where we had a tyrannical governor who liked to ruin people's lives and was very spiteful and evil. And was that way until the Supreme Court had to strip her of power. And then she still was spiteful with what she could do. And she only kind of shaped up a bit because elections and all that stuff. So I don't expect, and I'm in Michigan, if you can't tell, I don't expect, at least in my state, my governor to want to make this an issue, to say anything about it. Hopefully, no one will let her get away with that, and this will become a prominent issue very fast for the last like 2 weeks of the election, and she'll be forced to actually say, hey, we either are or we aren't going to make children take this to go to school. And I wouldn't believe her, honestly, either way. I'd be concerned, but at least get her on record. So if she says, I will not do this, then everyone can try to hold her to not forcing it, at least. So that's what we need to do. Another thing that this does, that's a really big detail, and Greg Price is reporting this, is once a vaccine is part of the childhood schedule, its manufacturers are shielded from injury lawsuits because the government compensates them under the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986. So Pfizer and Moderna, great day for them, and I'm sure that's probably really why they decided to do this. Not based on the science for the actual children, but to shield them from any kind of liability regarding their vaccine and any sort of injury that it may or may not cause. Um, this doesn't need to be in the childhood schedule. Um, Children are very unlikely to be harmed by COVID. They are very unlikely to die. They're more likely to die of suffocation, and other sorts of random stuff. But COVID's very low. Of course, like the elderly, people with high comorbidities and other stuff like that, they're more likely to I understand pushing for them to take that, or in the early days anyway, but children at this point, to put it on their schedule, their normal schedule, there's no justification for this. The science doesn't track. The science doesn't track. And you could say, well, there are children who get COVID and they can have myocarditis, so you want them to actually have the shot so they won't get the myocarditis. But there are people who get myocarditis after getting the vaccine. So I would rather just take the chance than purposely introducing the body to that. Because again, your child's way safer than you are from it. But we'll have to see politically if this becomes like the issue in the last few weeks of the election. To me, this is a bigger deal than gas prices, which they're going to be manipulating. Um, I don't know. The Democrats have to know that this is a bad way to go. If they're going to say, yeah, we're going to force your kids to take the COVID vaccine before they can go back to school. I would think that would be a bad thing to move to do politically. So they can either lie or they can decide to be rational and not do that. But I don't know if making the kids get the jab is the point, or if the bigger point and goal was to make sure that these manufacturers had liability and can't be sued. So we'll have to see where that goes. But in my opinion, wherever you are across the country, make this an issue. Make this an issue politically. Don't allow, my dad is like calling me. He knows it's 4 o'clock. Make this an issue. Make this an issue. Talk to your local legislators who's running, people who are running for state office, and definitely anyone who's running for governor. If you can get your hands on them, make sure you call up your governor's office and everything and try to get them nailed down on what they will say and what they will do regarding this, because it is not something that your children need. But they put it on there anyway, not because of the science. The CDC is such garbage. And I don't think at this point I'll get flagged because they changed the rules finally on like YouTube and stuff. But we'll see. We'll see. But it's worth still saying that it's garbage. That this is a garbage ruling, not based on any sort of science, that they don't need to do this. But they've decided to do it regardless. So protect your kids and vote for people who will do that. And vote out people who will not. Vote out people who will sell you and your children out. And vote out people who believe you are an obstacle to your children. This is, like I said, this is not the science. This is not the science, but this should be a really big campaign issue at this point. If I was Tudor Dixon or somebody, I'd send out mass texts right now. I call up a big donor and, you know, put it in a way that we don't know for sure what, I guess, Whitmer or somebody will do. But we don't know for sure, but I can speculate. And I think my speculation would be pretty on point. But if I was like in the legislature, I'd want to make a bill tomorrow or today and try to get it like signed ASAP and just be like, sign it, governor, and see what happens. That's what I would advise to do or try to do. I don't know how practical that is in this point in time, but it's important. We're talking about injecting your kids with stuff, making them making the kids get injected to go to school so they can go to school over something they don't need. It's psychotic. Anyway, let's move on. To Christopher Hayes and his rant about democracy and how Biden has to manipulate the gas prices to save democracy, which I was told that the president has nothing to do with the gas prices, but apparently he can dip into the strategic oil reserves, which he's done. And they're historically low, by the way. And that's a good thing, though. It's a good thing that he's doing that so he can lower the gas a couple of cents, because you don't want to be feeling the pain seeing those prices every day when democracy is on the line. I'm not kidding. This is such a weird segment that just lays it all out on the line.
Oil companies, OPEC, Saudis, not exactly eager to make sure prices are low before an election where Democratic candidates are vulnerable. It's also why Saudi Arabia might want to suddenly announce a cut in oil production right before the midterms. Of course, Democrats can't just throw their hands up and say, oh, well, because the future of American democracy is in, as we report night in, night out on this program, real peril, existential peril. One of the two major parties is currently under the thrall of a guy who tried a violent coup unsuccessfully, but has basically announced he'd do it all over again.
So, you're gonna, gosh. So, we went through a whole impeachment process about all this stuff, and Bolton said this wasn't a coup, and you can definitely not like how everything went down. I didn't like how stuff went down on January 6th. I didn't like Trump's response to stuff that led up to that. And that day, like I've said, I didn't think that he should have been holding a rally. I didn't think that was a good look. Anyway, a violent coup. Bolton said, it was such a funny clip and interesting when Bolton said, well, I've done coups. This wasn't a coup. And the man has participated, according to him, in coups, and he didn't think that it was an actual coup. I think he was talking to Jake Tapper when he said that. So obviously there were people there who rioted, who did bad things, who got arrested and went to jail. And there were people who were just kind of there who got harassed and super harassed, even like way after the fact. Like Ryan Kelly, FBI showed up to his house over like a year later and like raided his house in front of his small children. So it's pretty crazy still to me that people keep calling it a coup and that people are calling it a violent coup. Yeah, there are people who are violent, but there's still no like Trump telling them to be violent, to go overthrow. And if these people really wanted to engage in a violent coup, I think they just would have came armed to the teeth. But I don't think they are ready to start a new 1776 and redo the nation or something. That's not what. It's just really not what happened that day. Like you can be honest and say that it was bonkers. It was bonkers watching it. It was bonkers watching it, absolutely. But the whole coup narrative, it's in MSNBC. What can you say?
By one analysis, 60% of Americans will have an election denier on their ballot this November. The stakes in the upcoming elections are the highest they've been in a very long time. This is the first post-coup election in America.
So, just so we're clear, we are talking about MSNBC. You are just pushing Russia with them and CNN. They're pushing all kinds of conspiracy theories, entertaining people like Stacey Abrams and people who believe that Trump is illegitimate, people who believe the Supreme Court is illegitimate because a president who was elected appointed these people, and they're like, well, he wasn't really appointed or didn't really win, or they're mad because he didn't win the popular vote. So they try to say that the Supreme Court justices aren't legitimate, the ones that he appointed, even though what does the population matter? Because this the state, the Senate is the one who confirms it, and the Senate represents the states, and all kinds of dumb stuff. Hillary Clinton, all kinds of folks are election deniers, and not because they believe that Trump didn't legitimately win the election, is because they wanted to undermine democracy. They wanted to undermine democracy. Stacey Abrams, they know they didn't win. They know that, but they still pushed it anyway. They pushed so many conspiracy theories, and I think we ranted about that the other day, to undermine the sitting president, to undermine people's faith in not only our elections, but our system of governance, the person who was governing, to a level that, I mentioned this the other day, but the stories that went on about like the Afghanistan, like the bounties, the Russian bounties and stuff, that Biden pushed that conspiracy theory when the White House was like, that's not a thing. And then they pushed it anyway to undermine the commander in chief and how he was protecting and looking out for his own troops. And then after Biden became president, like they didn't like apologize or whatever. Like that was a big thing that they did. It was so irresponsible. And they're talking about threats to democracy. When they get in, if the Democrats win, they're going to try to get rid of the filibuster because they don't like being limited and having to not have crazy things and work across the aisle. So they want to get rid of the filibuster so they can do whatever they want to. They want to pack the courts. It's something that many Democrats have talked about. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but that's what they're entertaining, and they're saying like nothing is off the table. The press secretary said something crazy. Oh my gosh, this is off topic. But the press secretary was asked about stopping petroleum manufacturing and imports or something in the United States, and she's like, nothing's off the table. Do you know how much stuff is like made with petroleum? That's just crazy. I mean, we're talking about plastics and all kind of other stuff. So maybe she didn't know what she was talking about. Maybe she doesn't know what she was talking about. Sorry, I got sidetracked, but it just came to my mind. It was so unbelievable when I heard it. But they want to pass different voting rights laws that will supersede a lot of state laws. It will centralize our voting power in a lot of regards, which Obama said in 2016 that it's hard to cheat or impossible. He laughed at the notion of it because the states control their elections. So the fact that we are so decentralized is a safeguard. So all these Democrats want to make some more uniform sort of rules that will give them an advantage. So they want to make sure that they can't lose. Or they want to make sure that if they do lose, it's not really going to matter how they're going to structure the government from all the like irreversible damage they plan to do. So don't talk to me about threats to democracy when these people, they don't like democracy. They just like to win. And we're not a democracy anyway.
We cannot expect threats to democracy to be the only salient issue for voters, even if it is salient for a lot. I mean, there's millions of voters and people have complicated and busy lives and they've got things they're thinking about when they go to the polls, like the cost of living, inflation, and yes, gas prices, the one price in America that is posted on every street corner, those digits, they are going to be front of mind for voters. And so we find ourselves in a situation where keeping gas prices low is key to preserving and strengthening the future of our democracy. And so Here we are. Hence Biden releasing oil from the reserves today. And all this speaks to what the future of our elections will look like, because you can't just count on one thing to preserve American democracy. You can't just count on the voters to vote for it. And you can't just count on the courts, and you can't just count on civil society. It's going to require a broad coalition of factors, people being smart and tactically astute, all working together across the spectrum of civil society to preserve the American experiment.
So he totally acknowledges that Biden releasing the strategic oil, which is supposed to be for like emergencies, is political, and he's okay with that because democracy is at stake, and he needs to manipulate the prices to manipulate the voters, or else they're going to be unhappy when they go to the polls and be like, you know what, it's these darn Democrats. So again, we were once told that the president can't control the gas prices, and when he affects it like a couple cents, they're like, oh my gosh, he's so amazing. These people are so nutty. They're so nutty. So we've abandoned the lie that he can't control gas prices, right? But no, does he go out and set the numbers every day? No one argues that. So if that's what people are going to be like, our president does, of course he doesn't do that. But his policies do affect what the business and how it's going to reflect in the prices. All that matters. Our current supply, our future supply. If people expect that they're going to be in business in 10 years because he wants to ruin the fossil fuel industry, that's literally what he said. He wanted to end it. And he also said, Biden also said that he was willing to do it at the expense of your wallet. He said that on a debate stage. Of course, it was a Democrat debate stage. And they really hope that you never, ever look that stuff up. But it exists. And we've played it. I don't have it on hand, but it exists. And Trump was like going rally to rally, playing some of this stuff. And people still voted for him. And then when he shut down like Keystone, people are like, oh, shoot. This is a betrayal. Or maybe you guys are morons who don't want to believe when people tell you who they are. So they believe that Biden can control the gas prices, and it's actually a good thing that he's dipping into our reserves that are supposed to be for emergencies that we have depleted so much, because he has to save democracy, because there's so many election deniers, which Stacey Abrams will be one of those election deniers that they want to win, who are running, and we have to save our democracy from these people. I mean, don't you think if you're a parent, of course the gas prices and stuff matter, but wouldn't you be concerned about these people who really feel like you are just a breeder who produces these people for the state to control, to indoctrinate? Like that parental rights is a huge thing right now. That's very popular. That's winning Republicans in a lot of independents and even Democrats in areas, because their side has gone too far with a lot of different issues. Way too far. Look, I talk about Prop 3 a lot. I'm like, and by the way, some of the branding that people have, like, I think it's really dumb, to be frank. There's these signs, and people have signs about Prop 3. It's too extreme. It's too confusing. Are we confused, or do we know exactly what it's going to do? Who branded this? Too extreme, yes. Too radical, yes. But confusing? You're putting up signs that say you're confused? No, it's not confusing. It's child abuse, period. Point blank. That, by the way, I had a phone call today when I was getting ready, and it was a Whitmer supporter, and they wanted to know if I was supporting Whitmer, and I was like, isn't she supporting, Prop 3, the child abuse bill? And she's just like, Prop 3 is about, she's already like triggered. She's like, it's about abortion rights. And she's like, and I support Prop 3 because she's the woman on the phone said that she conceived through IVF. And without Prop 3, she wouldn't be able to have IVF or something like, which isn't true, but you might have to you could always just make new laws or something like that. We don't need Prop 3. Which IVF, that's a point of contention for a lot of people. A lot of pro-life people don't talk about it because I just don't think a lot of people know a lot about IVF, but we don't handle it in a very ethical way in America. We need some more restrictions or something about it, but there's just a lot of weird stuff. I'm not going to go on to it today, but IVF makes me very uncomfortable. But that's the route she started to go. And I said, it gives children the right to be sterilized. And she's like, it will just replace or Roe or something. It'll go back to what it was before the 1931. I'm like, that's not true. I'm like, do you agree? Do you think that children should be sterilized? And so she didn't want to answer. And she's like, well, you can still vote no for that and still vote for the governor. I'm like, but the governor does support it. And so she started to say, well, I said the governor said that she's the only one standing in the way of the abortion law, which is the 1931 ban. And I said, so she's the only one standing in the way of 30,000 babies being killed, 55.6 of them Black. And when I tell you, this woman scoffed so loud, she scoffed so loud. So I can't tell it can't be 100% what race this person was on the phone, but if I had to guess, I'm pretty sure it was a white woman. And she's like, you have your facts wrong. You need to check your facts. I'm like, those are from the Michigan. Those are the Michigan numbers for abortion. Like, I'm not making that up. That's not from Guttmacher. It's from Michigan. If you Google it, Michigan abortion statistics, you can find the 2020 numbers, 2021 numbers very easily. But the number is 55.6% of the 30,000. It's like 30,007 or something like that. But it's at least 30,000. 55.6% of those aborted sons and daughters are Black. Those are real numbers. And so it was interesting that she just refuted them. Because I know they're real. So I'm like, so she doesn't know. She's not defending them. Like, if that's what you're going to support, that's what you got to support. That's the reality of what you're standing up for. And she told me that she already voted for Prop 3. And so she ended up hanging up on me. But when she was arguing about what Prop 3 was, I'm just like, do you deny that it says every individual? And she wouldn't say. And I'm like, have you read it? Have you read it? I'm like, we can read it together right now. So it did get contentious between us, but she ended up with her hanging up on me. So she had a rough call. And I've made calls and stuff. I know it's not easy being on the other line, but she really shouldn't have entertained me for as long as she did. It was just really a waste at that point. It was just her wanting to argue. Because the reason why they call, and I'm sure you guys will get calls, they call maybe to persuade a little bit. And she tried like an objection, like you can still vote for her regardless of the whatever. But they're trying to get out the vote. So they're trying to gauge your numbers. They're trying to see like, hey, on election day, can they call you to make sure that you go out there and you do whatever to remind you to vote and make sure that you turn your absentee ballot or whatever. So they're trying to collect data. So at that, spending all that time arguing with me wasn't a good use of her time, especially how defensive I was and knowledgeable I was on the issue. And especially how passionate I was on the issue. That wasn't a good use of her time. But it was an interesting phone call, and I enjoyed it. But anyway, things like that are the parental rights aspect of knowing that they want to protect these traffickers and all this other stuff in their agenda and their ideology. The thing doesn't even say woman in there or female about that can get pregnant. It just says individuals or pregnant individuals, because I know that they don't want to admit that only women can get pregnant. There's just all this ideology, and then they want to be able to give sterilization rights and abortion rights and stuff to minors. That thing wigs parents out. Don't you think that's more on the forefront of people's minds than everything else? Don't you think people think that that's a greater threat to our whole entire country than some people who got arrested on January 6th? And if they want Trump to be irrelevant, for the most part, they could just leave him alone. For the most part, they could just leave him alone. The whole like raid on Mar-a-Lago and other stuff, that reinvigorated the base like crazy. Because people see him as like a symbol, and then they feel that they're just trying to punish him for going out there and fighting for their rights, for their freedoms and their liberties. And now you're mad that he stepped out and was fighting for the little guy, and you still want to punish him. And people feel defensive, and so that makes them want to protect Trump all the more. If they just like didn't talk about him, let him go, but they wanted this narrative so hard, so much, and they were hoping that this entire January 6th narrative could carry on all the way for 2 years. That was their plan. That was their plan, and they know that's not quite doing it. So we talked about Jen Psaki's tweet the other day. Let me pull it back up. Holy moly, CNN New York Times poll, more than a third of independent voters and smaller but noteworthy contingent of Democrats said they were open to supporting candidates who reject the legitimacy of the 2020 election as they focus on economic issues. Yeah, because there's other things that are more important to them every day. And as Carrie Lake points out, like, people do have the right to question that stuff, and the Democrats questioned stuff in 2016. Again, I had to participate in the recount, and it was annoying, but I can't. I remember I was at the inauguration when people were protesting and rioting. I was there. I was there witnessing people being attacked on the street. I recall it didn't fade away into nothingness and Flash went back in time and rewrote history. And we had a flashpoint. That's not what happened. It's still fresh in my mind, in my memory. So they're so full of crap. I think most people know that they're full of crap, and they care about the economy. They care about their kids. They care about their education. They care about their safety. And if Democrats can't rise to the occasion, and all they have is what happened on January 6th and abortion, they're not going to be in a good spot. Not throughout the country. May carry them over, unfortunately, my state, but we'll see. We'll see. Last thing I want to mention today is President Biden. He was asked if he had any limitations, and he was dodging, and people were kind of dodging this before for him. So he directly answered it, but also gave a nothingness kind of answer as well.
Should there be any restrictions on abortion at all? Any restrictions on abortion at all?
Yes, there should be.
What should they be?
And Roe v. Wade. Read it, man. You'll get educated.
No, I'm going to ask you.
Okay. Thanks.
Roe v. Wade, man. Get educated. Okay, Roe v. Wade's overturned. In case he kind of overturned that anyway. So people are pointing out, like, different folks and LifeSite News and etc. are pointing out that Roe v. Wade does allow for no restrictions if that's what the state wants. So you're still not quite saying anything. You're still not quite saying anything. So you can say you can say trimester, you can say a week. Like, a lot of Americans don't believe it should be legal past 15 weeks. And when people look at polling with Roe v. Wade, and they're like, oh, most people don't agree with it being overturned. Most people don't even know what it is, just to be frank. But if you look at the breakdown of the numbers, the Harvard and somebody poll, talked about it when it came out some time ago. A majority of Americans agreed that abortion shouldn't be legal past 15 weeks when you looked at the numbers. Not so if a majority of people believe that abortion shouldn't be legal past 15 weeks, then they actually agree with the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade and Casey. So when people say that they're protecting Roe or fighting for Roe, what do they even actually know what they mean? So I think there's the possibility that Biden is just a doddering old fool and he doesn't know what he's talking about. Um, I guess people could rate that pretty high on the list of possibilities, but he's also been in the Senate for a very long time. Um, he's, Catholic, so the issue was probably near and dear to him before he just like sold his soul. So I'm gonna assume that he knows more than he's letting on. And protecting Roe, protect Roe. I know that's just a talking point, and it's just like a knee-jerk reaction and how people respond. But I think he knows better. I think he probably knows better and knows. I don't know how deeply he's like, oh, I'm gonna avoid this question by saying this. They'll never know that I didn't say anything at all. Um, I think he's just continuing to try to just avoid saying a week or something like that. I think that's what it is. But I think he's got to know better. Someone said they're concerned about increased abuse and neglect if someone is forced to keep a baby they don't want. So I saw an interesting TikTok response to that. It was by Secular Pro Life. Someone asked a question about, or they posed a on TikTok. It's important. It's popular to do like arguments against yourself, like yourself, and then someone else's. You're acting like someone else, and you're having a conversation. And so the question was, well, it wasn't a question. It was more children will be abused, and then they were like, "Do you think that women who have abortions are more likely to be abusive?" And they're like, "No." So, I understand maybe people having that speculation, but according to the Turnaway study that the left loves to cite, but this is a part that they don't love to cite and isn't really cited. As a matter of fact, you pretty much have to read the book to know this. Um, 96% of women who are turned away from abortion don't regret not having an abortion. So there's plenty of people who think that at the moment when they see those blue lines that this is the worst thing in the world. What are they going to do? How are they going to manage? How, etc. And then time settles in and then they're okay. Or they figure it out. There's still also the option that people can put their baby up for adoption. Um, some people don't want to. A lot of people don't want to do that, but a lot of people decide to keep their baby, and they grow to love their children. And as a matter of fact, a third of women who are denied an abortion within the first week of being turned away don't regret not getting an abortion. So, in my opinion, I think abortion on demand is really, really immoral because we're saying like a week difference of not being able to have an abortion. Women can be like, oh gosh, that was a mistake. I'm so glad I didn't do that. So I understand that concern, but I don't feel that. I mean, people. It's a sad thing if any parent goes on to abuse or hurt their kids at all, but people are also very maternal and protective of their children. And even if people who may have kids and they're keeping them up at night and they may not like it at first, you still come to love your child. So again, I can understand that concern, but I don't think people who plan to have an abortion are inherently more prone to abuse their kids or neglect them if they decide to keep them. And again, 96% of women who are turned away from abortion, and this is over like a 5-year period, the turn away study, don't regret not having an abortion. So I hope that helps alleviate that. But people think about neglect and all sorts of other things. Even people who plan to have kids may not be good parents. At the end of the day, we have to just protect people from violence. So, oh, yes. Glad that helped. So, anyway, Biden, Stacey Abrams, all these people really don't believe in um, any exceptions. Now, Biden said that he does. He just didn't get specific, and I don't think he will want to get specific. I can believe that he genuinely thinks there should be exceptions. I just don't think he has the courage to really nail it down. And I think genuinely most people probably know that there should be. They know that it's a baby, especially like at 24 weeks, 32 weeks or something, like 39 weeks, you know. But they still can't bring themselves to say, yeah, we shouldn't be having an abortion at that point. And it's all for rhetoric, but it's also to continue to build on they can't go along with abortion needs to be safe, legal, and rare because that gives the implication that it's a bad thing, and they want it to be morally acceptable because there's a big industry that profits, frankly, off of eugenics and off of not just abortion, fetal trafficking, selling the baby body parts, experimenting on them, universities getting the remains and stem cell research, and our government doing humanized mice experiments, burning the remains in Baltimore for electricity, all kinds of weird stuff. It really goes beyond that as well. Even like I mean the abortion is an industry all its in itself, with the people getting paid. Like Gosnell got paid a lot of money, do specialized in late term abortions. Of course, he was a monster, but that monster went on for so long because was it like 15 years or something they weren't looking at the abortion clinics in that area. Just wildness. So the procedures are expensive, but then gosh, also people do these early childhood detection tests and stuff. That's expensive and rakes up some money for the hospital, and then people will go ahead and be like, "Oh, your child may have this. Let's go ahead and abort them." And it's just a I love capitalism, but there's a dark side to it too, unfortunately. And the more we consciously dehumanize, these people who are killed, the more the business just becomes business. And people don't like when I compare slavery and abortion, but when you see humans as commodities, what when you dehumanize them, and they just become like transactions or something, how how can it not be? I mean, people even see like babies even worse than that. I mean, do you know how many times I've heard people compare the unborn to cancer? And I don't know how many people out there have had someone who they've loved die from cancer. Oh gosh. But it's just such a disgusting way to look at people, especially babies. But that's where we're at in the world. Anyway, thank you guys for watching today. That's all I got for you. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different articles and different things that I have. I wrote one about the Michigan gender apocalypse coming up. With like Prop 3 and other stuff. So please share that. And that's going to come to your state too if they're successful here, I swear. Make sure that you're sharing articles, and if you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. I very much appreciate if you're able to do that. And also, another word of advice, I've said this, maybe this is my third time saying this, the CDC, they went ahead and voted to put COVID-19 vaccines on the childhood vaccination recommendation list and stuff. So there will be states that will go along with their recommendation and say that your kids need to have this vaccine to go to school. Make that a part of the campaign. Make that a campaign issue. It needs to be a campaign issue. Absolutely make it a campaign issue. People need to know what they're voting for and what their governors are going to push. So it's going to be up to the states. And you need to know if your governor, if your state legislator, whoever is going to support forcing children to take this in order to go to school, because it's really, really, really not necessary. The CDC did not follow the science, but it does also give liability to Pfizer and Moderna now. And maybe that's what it was mostly about. And maybe they won't push it, but we'll see. I don't trust these people, and you shouldn't either. God bless, and I will see you guys tomorrow.